to leap, take, inherently taken, or talk about all things witchy, craft related, law of attraction, manifesting, esoteric, and everything else in between. And today we're going to talk about anger and magic. So it feels like it's been a minute. Maybe it hasn't, but since I like sat down and just really talked about some magic stuff. But it feels good to do this, and I think this is a good topic. So I'm going to start this off. All emotions are valid, anger included. We live in a society, and y'all know, where anger, specifically in women, and I'll touch more to this momentarily, is frowned upon, to say the least. We won't even get into, ethnic black women specifically, it's, but women in general, it's, be pleasing, be nice, blah, blah, blah. Even when we probably should be upset. So let's start off by saying I'm operating from every emotion that I have is valid. Okay? It's valid. Now we can decipher, I can look at, how to express that emotion and, consequences of expressing said emotions. That's a different conversation. But the point is, what I feel is valid. For me anyway. So, and that includes feeling happy, feeling contentment, sadness. All these things are, when someone says they're really going through it, they're feeling sad. If you feel really content, if you're happy, that seems to be okay, right? At least even with you right now, we're just going to talk about for yourself. So most of us feel like, oh, those are okay emotions to express. But anger is one, that one is the tough one for some people. Let's just clear the air and just say everything can't be positive vibes only. It's just not possible. It can't always be positive. Good vibes only. It's not always good vibes. The whole conversation, like you can't have just love and light, because what is light without dark? There's an opposing situation, and there's a range as well between those opposing situations. So, I could be frustrated, which is a component of eventually possibly anger. And then I could be enraged. Like there's varying degrees to it. But either way, to experience contentment, happiness, joy, or even peace, to truly understand it, at some point you would have experienced the opposite, which might be anger. So I just want to lay some ground rules on kind of my thought process about this. So now that I've said all this, let's talk about using anger in your magic, in your spells, in your rituals, in your witchcraft. I have had actually really positive results. I have my notes here. I keep looking down because I want to stay on point. But I have had, when I say positive, meaning my intention was realized because of what I've done. So I'm going to give some examples. So my first example is I use it in a form of protection. So I've shared this story probably in a video some time ago, but basically it was this in high level. It was a situation where something was done to someone I cared about. And I wanted not only them to be protected after the incident, but, I wanted to ensure that nothing else happened. So that means something had to happen to someone else. You catch my drift. I did this in anger. Everything I did. I remember focusing on this particular spell when I was like really angry. This is probably one of the first times, and I mistake. There's another incident I'm going to talk about, but this is, now that I'm really thinking about this, is probably one of the first times that I realized how much my emotions, strong emotions, regardless of what that emotion is, can influence my magic. The way, it wasn't just me casting that spell, by the way. It's like I wasn't doing that protective magic yet, but not the layers that I was adding to it. I definitely was getting help from our ancestors to pull that off, definitely, because it's like I just knew what to use, how to do it. It was just coming to me, each ingredient, each step, each word, and I spoke it and I said it, and it was so powerful. But anger 100% fueled that. Revenge, a little bit of that in that first example, but something was taken from me. People came into my home and took things. And I remember thinking after they were gone and I was safe, or, I was so like the realization of what happened hit me. And I remember again in a moment of just higher self intuition, just knowing what to do. And I repeated something. And from what I understand, the series of events that happened right after that is there was a horrible car accident that those people who took this stuff out of my house and injured, death, but I did get my things back. They had blood over it, but I got my things back. True story. I was angry at that point. It was, see, I don't like being scared. No one does, right? But like once you get me to that point, like now I was so angry that I was so afraid. And then I was angry because my stuff was taken. So it was just raw, enraged anger. I was just so angry. So that was very powerful. And then manifesting. So I'm going to say this, and this is probably more relatable. You get to a point, you get sick of being sick and tired. Pick a situation, work, relationships, yourself, how you're feeding yourself, how you're not feeding yourself, the things that you do, habits, addictions, all that sort of stuff. You can get sick of being sick and tired, and you get frustrated with yourself. And frustration is a component of anger. It is. It can be, depending on it's a range. So I'm counting that as well. Getting to the point of getting almost angry and very, very frustrated, high level frustrated about my life and situations. That frustration, that anger was great fuel, energy. It was a lot of energy to put into certain spells and things. And I was able to manifest those things. Okay, so, and this is a more recent thing. So you need to get very, like, just that overwhelming feeling of like, it's not, I just can't do it. I don't want to do this. And why am I doing it? I don't have to do this, whatever this is, right? Or I don't have to be here, or I don't have to say these things, or whatever your deal is. For me, it was being someplace. It was doing something. And I didn't like that anymore. And I tried to make myself fit into a situation, and it's not going to work. It's not working. And I had to get really sick and tired of being sick and tired about the situation and trying to gaslight myself, which was making me more angry because it was very obvious to me that I'm gaslighting myself just to make it through this particular situation. And that's ridiculous. So I made a decision, and I'm already in a process of manifesting. And the universe, I am so aligned right now. Spirit, universe, at this point, my ancestors, everyone, we're all aligned on the same page so that I don't have to live in that situation again. I don't have to do that again. So my whole life's going to change because of it. So boom, without giving too much away. It's still active, so that's why. But my point is, I was able to use my anger. It's energy. So here's what I want to get into. Where I mentioned before, a lot of us, specifically people in general, I mean, we teach our children not to be angry. Don't be angry, don't be, or you tell them that, just sit with it. If you're not going to, behave, go to your room, and isolate them. But as you get older, like you really kind of know, you need an idea of what you want to do with these varying ranges of anger. I mean, like I said, frustration, stuff like that, usually it'll work itself out. Even anger to some degree, if you can just kind of focus on something else. But, there are things that happen after a while. That's just not going to be possible. And you need to use that. You need to transfer that. There's a lot of adults walking around, magical people who actually just transfer it to other people. We've all experienced it. This is common in romantic relationships, but definitely within friendships as well. They're angry. The more you talk now, you feel angry, It's a transference of energy. You have to be careful with that. That's not the ideal. We're not trying to do that. But as witches, um, we're told to usually release your anger or ground that energy. All good things. That's great, especially if you don't have anything immediate to use with it. But that's not the only way to deal with anger or those, I'm going to say, stronger emotions like that, that are deemed negative. Um, Learn to confront it first and foremost, because if you can confront it, you're still in a place of being rational, because anger can take you out of rational state. You're still holding on to some rationality if you can confront it, because you're willing to do that and really kind of examine. That's some like impromptu shadow work to understand what's really driving this anger. Once you have that, then you can use that. But if you're kind of just operating, impulsively from that anger, not necessarily. So, and then you can use it for your good. And your good might be revenge. If someone hurt you intentionally and unapologetically, if someone is hurting you, it is okay to want them to have some sort of consequence to that. We get into this thing where it's so interesting. We're in a space now where it's people are a little taken aback when you say things like to children, well, if someone hits you, you hit them back. So in real time, if somebody hit your child and your child hit them back, the schools, the parents, the kid that got hit back, everybody's shocked. Like, I can't believe this actually happened this way. Of course it happened this way. There's consequences to your actions. Now, that's just a light thing, but on a bigger scale, when you're talking about adults, especially witches, if you're in a situation where someone's really, it's not so much that they're saying something negative about you, but they're saying something negative about you to people who it would matter to. It might be someone who might be looking at you for a specific paying opportunity, or someone, you need to be influencing these people maybe for a familial situation, various things like that. And someone is speaking intentionally negative over you. Now, what's driving them? You could figure maybe they're envious, maybe they're insecure. You don't know. The point is, they're not going to confront that. They're not willing to confront why they're behaving the way they're behaving, but they're doing it and they're not going to stop. Well, sometimes, you know what? And if you've had an impact because they have the ears of someone who is believing them and it's affecting you, especially if it's affecting you financially, or from moving on to something with someone, I can definitely understand. I would consider doing something like this idea that you were supposed to being a witch means you just let that go. Or I've heard people say, oh, let karma handle it. Well, first of all, we need to be better educated about karma and what that means. It doesn't mean that you're going to get retribution or you're going to get some form of justice or even revenge. That's not necessarily what karma does. But you, as a practitioner, can seek that out for yourself. And that can be in the forms of maybe whatever they're doing is being done to them. That alone right there, simple, but that's very effective. And most people who are like that are typically insecure. If you're very envious and you're talking about someone and you're making things up, you're not a secure person. People like that cannot handle someone else doing the same thing to them. Their world will crumble. There you go. That's how you get that back. Seriously, that's enough right there. They can dish it, but they can't take it. 9.5 times out of 10, that is the situation. So that's they made themselves a target. You didn't just willy-nilly decide to hex or curse someone. No, you just returned that energy. Now, if you did want to do something more, that's on you. But my point is, the frustration over the situation, the anger that has arisen in you, doesn't have to you don't have to just try to suppress it or try to gaslight yourself into thinking it's not a valid emotion based on the situation. If you're feeling it, it's valid. So what do you want to do about it? You can ground it, you can release it, But if you're finding that it's still coming up, maybe it might be helpful if you did something else with it and used it to fuel something that would make you feel better. I'm just saying. We're human. A lot of us are practitioners, we're spirit, we have a lot of other things, but we are having a human experience. And being a human means having a range of emotions. You're not one way all the time. And we need to just stop this weird whitewashing of like people are supposed to act a certain way all the time. I want to just talk about this. So I have an agreement with myself. I kind of alluded to that with any of my emotions, to accept any of my emotions as they come. And that means that I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. Yeah. Instead of gaslighting myself, which I have done, gaslighting myself. And when I'm saying that, I'm basically saying, instead of trying to convince myself that whatever actions have taken place or my perception of what has taken place, it's not worth letting myself get my feathers ruffled. It's not worth being bothered, if you follow me now, telling myself that. But the reality of it is, if the feelings came up, then it is valid. Now, what that means, I have to work through that, but you have to be willing to work through that. Because, if you're not, like I said, you have to be able to confront your anger on why did this, is this some insecurity in myself that I'm being frustrated about? Am I, going through something? Did I have an unrealistic expectation about something? Or am I truly being blindsided and that's what's making me so angry, depending on what the situation is. So, yeah, I'd rather use that energy and put it in some sort of magic, put it into some sort of spell. Even if you code it into something, it can be used later, all that anger, there's something for everything out there. I'm just saying, if you want to just like encode that into a piece of crystal or something like that, and that crystal could be used down the road for something else that you might need, where you're trying to balance out something and something very contentment, positive, happy, or whatever, and then you have this other item that you've been encoding with all this quote unquote negative, angry energy. Maybe you need to balance some energies out. You put something in the middle. That could be a spell. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, I won't gaslight myself anymore. For me personally, I believe that my ancestors, I truly believe that some of my ancestors may have been warriors, because I do have a warrior spirit. Like, I'm really, especially as I get older, for the 5th millionth time, I'm also an Aries. That's my sun sign. That should tell you a lot. But, I can do I fight for what I feel is right. I'm not physically fighting, but, whatever that takes, I want to fight for what I believe is right. So I'm very, yeah, that's how I'm built. So, sometimes to generate the energy for the fight, and when I mean something that I feel is right, I could be fighting for someone else because I'm also very loyal. So what that really means, though, is that there's something fueling that fight. And usually it's anger. I'm very angry about something, or I'm fed up with something, and I want to change it, and I want to bust through this wall. I want to change, this law, or I want to be an advocate. And to get fueled up like that, usually there's a component, there's something like anger mixed in there, to get me through that. So I'm very comfortable with using anger in various ways. Yes, I ground and release, but mostly I'm also very action oriented. So I don't want to sit with anger. I want to do something. And the longer I have to sit with being angry, that's why I'd rather just confront it, get to the heart of it, and then do something about it. If it means a spell, then it's a spell. And most times it is. I've been talking about a black candle that I burn. I burned this black candle when it's sort of like a releasing and grounding situation with this. Um, and it's been very helpful to me for those other times. But when I feel like that's not enough, if I'm fired up enough about something, fire, yeah, I'm gonna use it in some magic. I'm gonna turn that in, and you could say that's transmuting energy. I'm definitely, when you're working spells, you need to have energy ahead of time, right? You want to gather the energy. There has, I mean, you can. Okay, let's talk about spell 101s. Okay, before you pour, light the candle, pour the potion, set the herbs on fire, whatever you're doing. You need to generate energy to put into all of this. Ideally, the type of energy that you're gathering is somehow related to what you're trying to work on. So if it's just energy, just in general, so for some people they clap. If you're not getting up and dancing, people clap, people snap their hands. You might have a tambourine or instrument or something like that. Some people do stuff with bells. They make sounds. They use the frequencies and vibrations of like a singing bowl as well. They tap into that, and that's a level of raising energy, vibration, and things of that nature. And then you start doing the spell. So if you didn't know that, you should be raising energy to put into your spell work. Your spell books that you buy at the store, the ones I review, no one talks about that part. You see the spell, but nobody tells you, like, okay, so I think for a lot of witches, when you look at spells like that, you're like, okay, so I see the spell, but I don't think it's gonna work. Like, you see the ingredients, and people just say, oh, it's your intention and energy, raise some energy. So I'm saying, for me, some of the most powerful work that I've done, magical work, I've used anger to be the energy to fuel the spell, and it's worked. Those are just the three examples, the three really big ones that I could think of, and it worked. I mean, ideally, I don't want to be angry. So I'm not looking for anger. I'm not looking to get fired up in that way. I can get fired up in other ways too. Sex magic is great for that. So, also another high energy, close related thing. That's why when if you've tried doing any sort of sex magic, you may get better results than what you have with any other time you've attempted to raise energy. And it was slow coming in, maybe the results, if you did like prosperity spells and stuff like that, or even protection work. You might feel like, it worked kind of, but this still happened, or I didn't get this, depending on what your spell was. I'm just saying, it's the whatever generates the most energy. I'll just say that. So essentially what I wanted to talk about, and the point I wanted to make, is that anger can be your friend. Especially when you feel like you can't get rid of it anyway, when it's stuck with you. So use it, confront it, and then be willing to understand what's making you angry and why, and then doing something about it. I'm saying be action oriented. Don't just sit and let it fester and it turns into resentment and eventually regret. Use that energy. It's all energy, emotions, all of that feed into your spell. When you are, especially for those of us who are trying to manifest big things in our lives, big life changes, please know how you feel matters. How you feel about whatever step you are in this process matters when you are manifesting, when you're doing visualizations, when you're scripting. I always say, feel the feels. Actually, in that moment, what does it feel like when all of it, if it's really happening right now, what does that feel like? Can you just imagine it? If you can't visualize, if you're not good with that, if you're not good with the actual visual, some people they don't do the visual thing. Okay, cool. Speak it. What does it sound like? Can you describe just, with your words, how it sounds, or more how it feels? What do you feel? Just thinking of being in a moment of whatever this thing or this moment or situation that you are manifesting. Um, those emotions can fuel. I have had a lot of practice. Actually, part of, for me, when I go over and mentoring, if I'm working with someone to help them develop better, being a better spellcaster, I'm going to tell you to tap into your emotions. Um, you know, in theory, it makes sense that if you are a magical person, a practitioner, and a spellcaster, that, you know, especially if you're doing work for others, that you're somehow removed. Well, you can't be removed. You have to have a skin in the game, even when you're doing work for others. I've only done work, like, I don't do work for others. If you go to my website, leaptaken.com, I offer services, including readings. I provide material. I'm willing to help you actually act out the ritual or go through with the spell. I'll customize for someone. And I'll make sure you have the tools necessary to carry it out for you. But I won't do the spell or ritual for you. That's not the type of work I want to get into. There's a million reasons why I can't even get into. There's a lot, but I'm willing to help guide someone so that they can get the results because it's in you. You can do it. But energy is a big factor, and your emotions and all of that. I'm just tapping into anger right now. I'm just telling you that don't run from it. Don't assume it's not useful. Don't assume that things will backfire because you used it. There are things that you can do in advance to make sure that if there is some backfire from a spell, you can set up boundaries, basically a protection spell that gets absorbed and it never actually affects you. So there's multi-layer spells to that, especially if you are. Now, with that being said, me personally, as a, and I've shared this before, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So do you already have something set up, herbs already blended for protection? Do you have oils already blended to do protective work? Do you already have a candle already ready to go, a specific color that you recognize as, for protective energy? Then in a moment like that, when you're usually angry, there is some impulsivity, impulsive. You're usually impulsive. There might be some, because you're just, you're teetering on trying to stay rational and being consumed with anger, right? That's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as you can kind of keep a tight rein, just barely enough to go through with the spell and to remember to protect yourself. But I'm just saying, it's possible. You can, which I really didn't talk about, is you can also use this anger, these strong emotions like that. It doesn't have to necessarily be for something negative. It could be, back to my sick and tired example, me being very sick and tired of a situation that I was in. That anger kind of had me focusing on not wanting to feel that way. So then I started focusing, but I was still, all that energy was there. So I was able to really focus a lot on the opposite, but I was still using the anger, all that energy from that to fuel it, to make this other thing, come into reality, this other positive, what I truly wanted, instead of having to deal with what I didn't want. So just more about that. But anger doesn't have to be something you run from. Please give it a try. Instead of grounding and releasing, you may be able to use it. So hopefully you found this helpful. Again, I'm Mika. This is Leap Taken. Please hit like, subscribe, share, and check out leaptaken.com for some of my services. And Leap Taken is on Instagram and TikTok, so you can check out some of the stuff that I upload there. And as always, thanks again for watching. Oh, I almost forgot. Please don't forget to hit the join button and join the Leap Taken membership here on YouTube. All right, bye.